viewers, dear viewers, welcome back. After a short break, we were talking about racism in 21st century Britain and its impact on ethnic minority. Today we have two very distinguished guests. On my right hand side, Barrister Talha, who is a political commentator and a very well known lawyer in British Bangladeshi community, and to my left is Famida Rahman, who is a recent graduate, and she's been involved with different sort of campaigns, particularly focusing on human rights and other issues. Thank you very much for being with us today. In our previous segment, we were talking about the meaning of racism in 21st century Britain, the sort of progress that we made, and how and still how ethnic minority, how we've been victimized in different levels, starting from school, then also the same time living in different area. And you also mentioned about the glass ceiling. Even someone from ethnic minority, even if they got right sort of qualification, it is it is still difficult to get a good job, and also at the same time to mingle with right sort of folks so that you can actually progress. But I was looking into data, university admission data, and if you look into, we were talking about Russell Group universities, and you also mentioned you go to one of the Russell Group university and how you face those sort of differences from your time to time. But these young people from ethnic minority, when they are already marginalized, don't you think there is a serious risk that those deprived young people can be radicalized very easily, given the circumstances that we live in a very dangerous 21st century? What is your opinion on it?
Two things I'll say. Firstly, it has almost become a fashionable thing to talk about minorities, especially Muslims, and talk about radicalization. A lot of people has become radicalized, including some getting involved into nasty terrorist activities. But we need to keep things in perspective. One of the things is, if you look at the percentage of people who has got involved into radicalization and extremism, their percentage remains extremely low. Right? I do not believe their percentage is any greater than the overall percentage of white population being involved in far-right fascistic activities. Right? So that is something we need to keep that in mind. But having said that, I think there is a problem, a growing problem within our community. And I think the problem is more about gang and violence, getting involved into drug and gang violence, more so than radicalization in the sense of getting involved into extremist activities. But both of them, they do tend to be dominated predominantly by people who haven't done very well. But on radicalization, I think there are some very well-known cases where people come from very affluent, very middle-class, very educated background, and yet, so the common link often happens to be more about people who did not have a very settled view of themselves, i.e., a strong sense of identity rooted in the issues they feel. So if you're a Muslim, most of the so-called terrorists and extremists happen to be from background where they were not very religious previously, do not come from religious background. Suddenly something happened, they became very religious and almost very extreme. What that suggests to me is that they never understood. They always,
so that fluctuation.
Yeah, so they never quite understood their identity, and so they were vulnerable to brainwashing by others. Whereas people who grew up with a strong sense of identity of being whoever they are, being Muslim, having a strongly rooted understanding in their traditions, I think they are secure. So to sum it up really, I think yes, there is a risk if you haven't done well, if you have been victim of state or other groups because of which you are marginalized, it is possible that you become vulnerable to effectively share a platform with people who are prepared to, give you, if you like, a hand to hold on to and provide a group that you feel belong to. But I don't think there is a clear link between underachievement and racism along with radicalization. So we rightly need to be mindful of that, but I think we need to be cautious that we don't exaggerate the challenge.
So you think in many cases the media or the politician, they try to generalize the idea that if you are from a certain ethnic minority, if you are disadvantaged, then you can be very easily radicalized.
Yeah, although what they often tend to say is that if you have a religious political view, or if you are socially conservative, then there is a theory, although I strongly and many people strongly dispute that, there is a theory which happened to dominate government policy, is that social conservatism, religious conservatism automatically leads to extremism, which then leads to violence, violent terrorism, right? But that is not backed by evidence. Evidence doesn't, there is no set profile of a typical prospective terrorist. There isn't a profile as such.
Thank you very much, Barrister Talha. Fahmida, if I can ask you, the subject that you study, once you finish your study, then once you start applying for jobs, do you think you have to prove yourself, in a much more authentic way than your other classmates, those who are from white background, because of your ethnic minority? You have to prove yourself somehow extraordinary to get a good job. Do you somehow sense that sort of risk in your near future? Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think to even sort of get noticed, or for someone to pick up on your attributes or your skills, you have to be outstanding, above and beyond. There is a certain bias that plays in when people look sort of
how
even at a paper application.
What's your ethnic minority?
Yeah, the way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way you sort of, the confidence with which you walk in, and all of those things. And I think a lot of different factors do play into that, and I think it's something that we all struggle with. I mean, if I go back to when I sort of first graduated from my undergraduate degree, I applied for a job. Well, I applied for one job, and I did happen to get the job, but in the process it was sort of like a friend approached me in the street and she was like, this graduate scheme, you should apply for it if you're interested in social work stuff. I looked at it, I thought, oh, it's an office job, I'm never going to get that. Why are they going to employ me over anyone else? And actually, when I looked at it again, the only reason I applied to it was because it was a diversity scheme. So I wasn't competing against people that I wouldn't be looked at against, like they wouldn't completely overlook me because I'm in a pool of people that are similar to me. And I think that
because of that scheme, you were somehow advantaged for your first job.
It's the only reason I applied for it was because it was a diversity scheme, and I didn't have the confidence to, it sounds crude, but I didn't have the confidence to believe that they would recruit me, my application, next to all these people. And I think all these sort of people that are more privileged in various ways than me. And I think it's not just black and white. There are so many things that play into it. I mean, your social class, the opportunities that you've had access to, the networks that you have, the previous internships and things that you've done. And I think a lot of that, like you say, comes from your networks. And when you don't have that, you're just a small fish in a very big pond, a small fish that happens to be a bit brown. I think you are sort of wary of that in a lot of ways.
But do you think this can lead to further frustration? As for example, definitely you have to have a very good result in order to go to Russell Group universities. But then on top of it, if you are from ethnic minority, you have to prove to be one of the extraordinaries. Then even after completing your study from one of those good university with a good result, then if you fail to get a good job, don't you think that can lead into some sort of frustration, and what can be impact of that frustration? What do you make of it?
I think, yeah, you can. It's very easy to be frustrated, disillusioned, and all of those things by it. I have plenty of friends and relatives who have experienced that frustration. I think a couple of people have actually turned around and said, I'm thinking of changing my name just to get an interview, or what if I applied as Rob Smith? Maybe they'd look at me for a second time. So I think, yeah, there is that disillusionment, especially when you're sort of waiting and waiting and waiting. But I think also it's sort of not just like, I think the not getting recruited is one stage, but actually when you do become a part of those institutions and the inequality within those institutions, the inequality within a university,
that
and
you
the
cannot
inequality
progress further.
Yeah, that you can't progress. I mean, if you look at universities, there are huge attainment gaps between BME students and their white counterparts. And then if you look, again, it picks up on the issue that you were talking about. If you look within BME communities, there are huge attainment gaps between those that come from disadvantaged working class backgrounds and those that have come from more middle class backgrounds, have gone to like better schools and things like that, have had a paid for education. And I think that sort of manifests itself in these diversity schemes in the workplace. You find the people that are better able to align themselves with middle classness, with whiteness, that have had those experiences, that have enabled them to do that, are the ones that get ahead, the ones that can sort of feel genuine, denouncing their cultural identity. For someone that's grown up eating rice and curry every day and who goes home knowing that I'm Bangladeshi, I mean, it's very difficult to be like, no, I'm British, and turn around to everyone and be like, yeah, I'm British, I'm more British than you. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't come naturally to someone like me.
Thank you. Hold that thought for time being. We need to go for another quick break. We'll talk more about racism in 21st century Britain on today's program, NTV Community Matters. Dear viewers, please stay with us. We need to go for a quick break. Thank you.